eBay friends. This is Suzanne A. Wells, and you have landed on episode number 62 of eBay the Right Way. Today's date is May 25th, 2022. Tanya Gibson is my guest in this week's episode, and we will get straight into it.
Hello, listeners. Today we have Tanya with us, and she is a repeat offender on the eBay Money Making Mondays on the Facebook group. Say hello to the listeners, Tanya.
Hi, everybody.
And where exactly are you located?
I'm located in Northern California in Marin County. So basically what's on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge from the city.
Okay.
In San Francisco.
Okay. The first thing that comes to mind is how high your prices are on everything. Are you in one of those areas with like thrift stores that mark their stuff up and that kind of thing?
That's a really good question. Yes. In short, yes. And there are a lot of other resellers here. I know because I see them all the time. The estate sales are incredibly high priced most of the time. So estate selling here, even though there are a lot of estate sales, requires a lot of out of the box thinking, because if it's a collectible that has a name that you would recognize on the bottom of it, so will everybody else, and so will the estate sellers. So, it's the kind of thing where I go to a lot of them, but I might wait till the last day and then dig around the garage and find like a weird vintage electronic that the estate seller isn't aware is worth something. Because if I try to go for collectibles in that situation, I'm not going to have enough meat on the bone to make any money off it. So the best place here is definitely garage sales. Garage sales in older neighborhoods. I live in a neighborhood where a lot of the houses were built in the 50s and 60s, and a lot of those people are now moving, and their kids don't care about their weird vintage toys and collectibles, and that is probably where I make most of my profit.
Their old Tupperware that's ugly, and the mushroom canisters and all that stuff that is coming back now.
Oh, that's exactly right. I live in a mid-century modern designed house. These were the ones that were designed back in the day to be, the affordable thing for like the first time homeowners. They're kind of boxy. They're one story. And a lot of the people around here who are moving out just take their mid-century things like mid-century lamps and sofas and beautiful little thingies and leave them on the curb when they move out. And that has been really lovely for me.
Okay. So back to your estate sale, there's a name for that when you go on the last day. It's called the Challenge of the Leftovers. And it is. I feel like the more I do this business, the more challenges I like to accept, because it's just stuff is everywhere, and you really do have to think outside the box and, zig when other people zag and all that kind of stuff to get your hands on anything valuable. Because while there are more and more resellers as time goes by, well, I feel like there's as many people leaving too. So I hear that a lot. But it's just, you have to come up with new strategies to find stuff and be willing to do things that other sellers aren't willing to do.
I like to get my hands dirty. I'm a digger. So I really actually love like the garage and the basement. And I'm not afraid of like the spider webs or the mouse droppings or whatever. That's what gloves are for.
Or the mice themselves.
The mice themselves, dead or alive. I'm okay with most of that. I've just happened to not be particularly like freaked out by those things. Like, so yeah, to me, it's a fun challenge going into one of those garages where you have to use your phone as a flashlight and poke around. It makes me feel like a little kid on a treasure hunt.
Well, in the days of masks being required, it's almost like, oh, I might just keep doing this, because going in the dusty, moldy basements and stuff, you can just wear a mask if you don't want to breathe that yucky air. But yeah, you're right. It takes a certain personality to want to dig through all that stuff. And, but that's why you're successful, is because you find good things. Now, when you do shopping at people's curbs by their house through their garbage, has anyone ever said anything to you?
That's a really good question. So, people will almost always put it out on next door over here saying like curb alert,
Right.
we'll do a clean out. So obviously it's not like I'm taking things that I'm not supposed to take. I'm not literally digging through people's garbage bags, but
Gotcha.
There's always curb alerts. And most of the people I know in real life don't know that this is my sideline.
Mm-hmm.
So it was right before Christmas. I was out there. It was going to rain the next day, which where I live is actually rather rare, the rain thing, but it was going to rain. And there was a thing in next door that said that there's all these things at curb alert and they'd be taken to the dump later. So I showed up and I picked up a few things, and then some beautiful china was coming out, which ended up being a really good deal for me. And I was picking it up and I bumped into two moms whose kids went to school, in elementary school with my younger child. And they did look at me like I had three heads. They were like, "What are you doing? You're taking things from the curb." I'm like, "Well, you're allowed to." And they were like, "But why are you doing that?" I was like, "Because this is my business." I guess after that, most people around here now know what I do, because I think those moms probably said, "Yeah, Tanya was taking garbage off the curb when we saw her last."
But like most people don't care, because it takes a special person to do all the steps of selling on eBay. Find the stuff, get it listed, be patient, wait for it to sell, ship it, deal with customers if there are issues. And it's just a lot of steps. So at first, when I started selling, I was terrified that everyone's going to do this. Everyone I know is going to do this, and I'm not going to have anything to sell. And as time went by, it was like, yeah, they're never going to do this.
Yeah, the number of people who have asked me to consign for them, to do this on a consignment basis, which I don't want to do because I already have enough things to list on my own. When I try to explain and they say things like, "Oh, but like I'm the one who's providing the goods." And I'm like, getting the goods is actually the funnest, not that that's a word, but let's pretend it is. It is the funnest part for me. And it is the easiest part. The hard part is the research and the listing and the cleaning. The china that I eventually sold was beautiful, but it needed to be really cleaned or else it was going to look like junk. And then God knows, as everybody who does this knows, the packaging for anything that's breakable, the amount of work and time that goes into packaging things that are fragile, and all those pool noodles.
Yes. Well, and here's the thing is, have you ever turned it around on them when they say, "Oh, I have this great, Tiffany lamp that you can sell. I'm providing the goods." And you're like, "Great. Why don't you sell it?" And then they're like, what do they say? "It's too much work. I don't have time."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love the "I don't have time," because people have time for what they want to make time for. If they want to sit in front of Netflix for 3 hours, that's what they're doing with their time, which there's nothing wrong with it. I do eBay and have the TV on, but
Me too.
I have great responses when people say, "I don't have time," because really you make time for what's important to you.
I agree.
And I did consignment off and on. And part of it was I did it for a thrift store that was like a small Humane Society thrift store for about a year. And I learned a lot, because you can work with things you're not familiar with that you would never see. And I raised $11,000 for that thrift store by myself as one person selling their stuff on consignment. And
wow.
Then I just was like, I need to get back to my own store. But, they weren't paying me enough for my time to do it. And you do all the work up front, and then you have to wait for it to sell, and it may never sell, and all that kind of stuff. But they didn't want to train anybody to do it. I was like, you could set up this back room and I can set it up for you. I can train the person and you could pay them $8 an hour to do this. And they would not spend the money to pay somebody. They only wanted the money to come out of if the item sold. And I was like, yeah, well, that's a great concept, but I'm not working for free anymore.
That sounds like a good choice.
Yeah. So a lot of sellers have been down that consignment road, and it really is all about time. And I just decided I'm going to spend my time on my own stuff, because that is the easy part, getting the stuff. Mm-hmm. So we didn't go over how you got started on eBay.
So I've always loved estate sales. I've haunted them for a long time. And I think now 3.5 years ago or so, I know what happened. My husband took the kids somewhere, and it was one of those rare nights. I have 2 teenagers, but they were a little younger then. One of those rare nights I could do whatever I wanted by myself. And what did I do? I went to an estate sale at the end of the day, and then I went to Goodwill. Mm-hmm. And then I came home and watched a movie. Okay. And I thought, wow, like a lot of people would do other things. They'd go to the spa or they'd get their nails done. Like I went to Goodwill and I really enjoyed it. And I brought home like an olive dish. I don't even like olives, but I could tell that it was expensive. Mm-hmm. And I said to my husband the next day, he said, what did you do? And I told him, and he thought it was a funny way to spend my time. And I said, well, I really have a pretty good eye for what sells. Like if I sold that olive dish, it would sell for $30 and I spent $2 on it. I said, I really think I can monetize this hobby. And he said, he hates clutter, by the way. He's a minimalist and I'm a maximalist. And he said, oh my God. He was like, that's just going to clutter the house more. He was right, by the way. And I said, no, I'll keep most of it in the garage, which is mostly true now. I said, I really think I can make a sideline out of it. And since I already worked for myself, I'm a writer and a freelance editor, it would work because I have a very flexible schedule. And I started slowly, but picked up a lot of speed within about 6 months. Once I started going to more estate sales, I watched a lot of videos. I watched a lot of your videos. I watched a lot of videos from a bunch of other people. Mm-hmm. It made me, and I love research because again, I'm a writer. Mm-hmm. So the part about like figuring out where this stuff came from, which is just solving a mystery, was really, really fulfilling to me in ways I hadn't even expected. And so it took off, and it's been a big part of my life.
That's a great story. Now, how long ago did you start eBay?
3.5 years ago.
Oh, so you're pretty new.
Yeah.
Great. That is wonderful. And I love what you said about researching, because I'm the same way. I'll be like, well, why is this more valuable? What makes this valuable? Why? Because when you know the why, then you can apply that to other things and it helps you remember it.
Oh, yeah.
Which one of these, which version of this is the most valuable? And I just think it's fascinating researching all this stuff. And some of the reasons that these expensive items are expensive is just, it's just like mind boggling. Like these celebrities that endorse different products and, on their Instagram, oh, I'm drinking this health shake, or I'm using this product in my kitchen. And I mean, they're getting paid to do it. And maybe they really do use it. I don't know. But my feeling is this is just another form of advertising. But then other people see that, Jennifer Aniston uses this type of blender for her smoothies, and then they all want one, and so it's finding out what's driving the demand that's so interesting to me. So let's talk about some of your notable sales, some interesting or high dollar sales or things that surprised you when they sold.
There have been a few lately. I've expanded into a lot of different niches, which I think has, by the way, really been helpful. I know that, people have talked about there being slowdowns online, and I think that there probably really have been in reselling. But the more I expand different places, the more that I feel like that's cushioned, because you don't really know what people are looking for. So one of my best buys lately, and I think I've put a lot of these on your feed, on your Facebook, on Money Making Mondays, was there's a local online auction place near us that I really love. And they have unfortunately become very popular. A few years ago, I could get things for a steal. Now they're known because they're very honest. They're very good. They always have good things. Now there's like tons of people who bid. And so again, I have to look carefully because, I don't want there to be no meat on the bone. So one day I'm looking and I see that one of the items, it was someone who had a lot of craft things in the estate, big things of rubber stamps. And I was looking at some of those, and then there's a big bin and it said party supplies and stickers. And I was like, I don't want party supplies. That does not sound good. And I looked and it was
stickers. Yeah, you've been posting stickers.
Oh, yeah. The party supplies obscured in the bin the fact that there were several rolls and then 2 giant binders of stickers, only a couple of pages of which were shown. And I'm pretty sure sticker people haven't usually been on this auction site. Or again, I really think maybe people just took a quick look and saw party bags and confetti and were like, I don't want to bid on that. So for $46, I get this giant bin. And those Mrs. Grossman stickers, we live about a half hour from where the factory is, where they used to make them. Some of these people who collected them out here were collecting them since she started in the late 70s. Some of those stickers are ubiquitous. You can find them anywhere, but a lot of them are pretty rare. And a lot of times people would pick up from the factory sticker sheets that were misprints because they were cheap, except now they're not cheap because they are rare, because they are misprints. I've been selling those for anywhere from $10 to $70 a sheet for stickers. And they usually go overseas to collectors. They usually go to Asia, specifically Japan, sometimes Korea.
Very interesting. Now, is there like a certain theme? Are they animals? Or they scratch and sniff? Like, what is so great about them?
These are not scratch and sniff, although those do very well, certainly from the 80s. It is really just rarity. It is nothing specific. And so I can never count on guessing like, oh, those cows just look like those pigs. They're not going to be worth anything. You look them up and sometimes the cows are $1 and sometimes a different cow is, $25. Or best of all, a lot of these that in this particular collection, I can't find anywhere. And if I can't find something anywhere, I set the price super high. And as I mentioned in a post, I think on Monday on your Facebook page, if I have a lot of them, I don't list multiple quantity. I list one.
Until you can see the value. And then you
and otherwise it's not rare. If people know I have 10, it's not rare.
Perfect.
I've done the same thing with postcards when I have multiples. 1 is rare, 10 is not rare. If you only have
put one out there and see
right.
what kind of reaction you're going to get and what gets sold, and then you do another one.
Right. So that's been one of my favorites. The other has been a category I never thought I'd be interested in, which is like shampoos, like the health and beauty things with the high-end shampoos, because I am honestly a girl who uses like $3 shampoo. I know nothing about that. I go to the drugstore and I buy what's on sale. I am probably the only person in my neighborhood who does this, but that's just how I am. But I remember.
Well, I mean, that stuff's really expensive. So, and I don't think a lot of them that claim to make your hair thicker and all that stuff, I don't think they work. It's just marketing.
So I just spend my $3 on my own shampoo. But then there was an estate sale that had all these products from Wen, and then also sealed lip glosses, etc., from Philosophy, and body washes. And I went over, and again, it's not anything I know about, but because of, channels like yours, I do know that they sell for a lot, and came back with 2 giant boxes of these for a total of about $50. And I made back my money the first day on 1 bottle.
The gallon size thing?
Some of them are gallons, yes.
Yeah.
And some of them are even smaller. I continue. The lip glosses go for anywhere from $10 to $25 each from Philosophy because they're shades, I guess, that aren't made anymore.
Yeah.
It's really awesome. And I thought, wow, that's never something I would have expected. My husband laughed. He was like, what's with all the shampoos? It's a big box. It's going to take up space. And I was like, I think these are going to fly out the door. And they did.
Yeah. Those discontinued items can really sell for high prices, but I just don't understand the mentality. It's discontinued. So, okay, you pay $100 for this one bottle of shampoo. It's going to run out. And then what are you going to do when you can't find any more? So why don't you just find your substitution now?
Right.
Like you're going to have to find a substitute when there's no more left.
Find a similar smell. Like it smells like gingerbread. Other things smell like gingerbread. There's lots of gingerbread things out in October, but I'm happy that people want them so much.
I know. I love it. I can't wrap my head around that when something's discontinued and at some point there will be no more of it. So why are you spending hundreds of dollars just to have a few more months to enjoy it? I think part of it is people like to say, oh, they discontinued my favorite shampoo. I had to go on eBay and pay $200 a bottle. It's just terrible, and so they can be that victim and talk about that story and impress people with how much they spent.
My favorite is actually, I just found this 2 weeks ago when I was in a different city doing something with my kid. Those soaps that at the time never even sold, they were like supermarket soaps, like specific kinds of Dove or of Irish Spring. I found
Dial had one that was the scent was cut grass.
Right.
Like ew.
Right. There's a reason it was discontinued.
Right. Like
nobody wanted to.
Yeah.
Like, I'm allergic to grass. I don't want that on
that doesn't smell good in real life,
But if they sell, I mean, those are so lovely to be able to sell because they're easy to sell. They're easy to pack, $60 for some Irish Spring. And it has the original label on it that said it was like 89 cents in the grocery store.
And I wonder if those kinds of things are used as gifts. I'm sure they are. Like, your 80-year-old mom loved Caress soap in the 80s, and it was this special purple one with the lavender scent, and they find it on eBay, and it's the gift for the person that's hard to buy for. Like, oh mom, here's this soap you used to love, and it just makes somebody happy. So I think there's some of that going on too.
I think you're right.
Yeah, those are interesting. What else have you sold that kind of blew your mind?
A couple of years ago, I was at an estate sale that was being run, not by specific sellers, by the family.
Mm-hmm.
And I came near the very end, and there was a Disney cookie jar, a Christmas Disney cookie jar, right up near the front. And my assumption was, if it's right up near the front and you've come in like 7 hours in, it's obviously not worth anything. There's a lot of things out there from Disney that I love Disney. I'm one of those people who loves the theme parks and loves everything Disney, but I'm like, there's a lot of stuff like that, and it's breakable and it's big.
Mm-hmm.
But I looked at it and then I turned it over, and I don't remember offhand who made it, but it was like somebody who made it that, isn't Disney with, and I thought, this could be worth something. And it says it's like 1 of 500. But again, there are a lot of things out there that are collectibles that are 1 out of 500 that are worth $15.
Right.
And I asked what they want. They say 20. I'm like, oh, and I have to carry it down this long driveway to my car. No. And I put it back. Twice I put it back. I finally get a couple of other things like a record and a book. And I asked, well, would you take 15 for this? Because I just had a bad, and there's no connectivity. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. A lot of places where I live, you can't get cell service on AT&T.
Mm-hmm.
It's very common. About a third of the time, I can't look up things. So I was like, what happens if I drive home and I look it up and it turns out it was worth something? I'm like, this is really silly. I'm being really stupid over the $15. It's fine. I can just donate it. So I got it for 15. and I drove, and I decided to drive to another estate sale. So I wait till I could have connectivity, actually pulled over and looked it up. And this thing eventually sold for $800.
Wow.
When I looked it up, I started crying. That was probably the first big sale I had made. It was probably like about, it was before the pandemic. I started crying. I called my husband. I was like, hey, like how I've been doing that business thing with the garage sales. And I sent him a picture, and I sent him like the comp on Worth Point, because nothing like it had sold on eBay. And he was like, are you sure it's the same one? I was like, yeah, I'm really sure. Look at the bottom. It's the same one.
So you were like the contestant on The Price is Right that won the showcase. It's like,
it felt like it. It felt like it, because you always read these stories until you have one like that. You read these stories online and you're like, it'll never be me. But I think I've learned from that to trust my gut. I've trusted my gut a lot.
So you are a regular person. eBay is not your full-time job, and you balance homeschool and a marriage and a house and your other job, which is how many hours a week, would you say?
I think it really varies. It varies on how much I'm homeschooling at the time. My youngest child is about to go to regular high school in the fall, so I'm about to come up with more time. But I probably spend about 15 or 20 hours a week doing writing and freelance editing, in addition to homeschooling him. So I try to fit eBay around that. And, I'm one of those people who is not as consistent as I wish I were. Sometimes I list 0, sometimes I list 15. It really, really depends on what I can do. My best listing comes when I've taken a lot of photographs ahead of time, and then I could list while I'm already sitting down doing something else, or sitting in the car, or doing any of those things that moms do where there's a lot of waiting time because, your kid's lacrosse coach said you have to pick up on time at 9:00, and then it's 9:45 at night, and he still has the kid out on the field, and you're in the car. And at least if you have the photos on the phone, then you can start listing things that are easy that you could guess the weights on. That's why I like things like stickers. Stickers are great because I know stickers and postcards. I keep a thing of vintage postcards in my purse. I can photograph them in the car and crop them so you don't see the car seat or anything underneath it. And I know what they weigh in a mailer. So that makes it very convenient. That's what we do on trips too. I put my store on vacation, but I always continue listing, and it's always postcards. Like we have an RV. So like if we go on an RV trip, there's very little room. There's barely enough room for a toothbrush, but I can bring 150 postcards and list 5 a day sitting at a picnic table. And this way, the algorithm likes me because my store is continuing to list. And sometimes I've even gotten lucky, like not realizing once that there's a collector in Nevada who really likes Mount Lassen volcano postcards. We live about 3 or 4 or 5 hours from Lassen, and I happen to have gotten some at an antique store, an antique sale right before we left. And I'm sitting there listing them in the RV just so that I can make the algorithm, happy. And this guy is buying them as quickly as I'm listing them. I was like,
oh my gosh, that is crazy.
I finally wrote to him and I was like, I have more. Do you want me just to show you a picture of them? And I'll just make you like a private listing and you can have all the volcano. So that was really nice because I felt like I was making money while I was on vacation.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the perks of this is making money all the time. Now, back to the postcards. I get this question all the time. People that come into hundreds or thousands, shoeboxes full of postcards, estate sale, or their own family, somebody passes away. And they're like, this is so overwhelming going through them one at a time. But that's really the only way to find you have to cherry pick because there could be one in there that's worth $500 and you really just have to go through them. Do you have any advice on that topic?
My best advice, which I did not used to take, but now I do, is only go through them once. Don't put it back in the box because you're like, oh, now I know it's around $10, unless you're going to put like a Post-it on it. Because I used to do that all the time. I'd get distracted. There's a lot going on in my house. I'd throw them back. I'd be like, okay, these are the ones that are worth something. And then I end up looking them up a second time, which is silly. It's like doing the same work twice.
Mm-hmm.
I also would not get too hung up on wanting a specific postcard that you think is cool to be worth something when it's not. It's very hard to predict what is worth something. It can be like the coolest picture ever, but if there's a lot of them out there, it's worth like 75 cents. It can be like the dumbest picture of like a cow, but it's in it says it's in a town that no longer exists. Or it's a boat, but it turns out that boat sunk 2 months later. I kid you not. Or anything like that, or disaster postcards. Those sell really well too. You're like, what am I looking at here? It looks like there's a lot of water. It's probably a disaster postcard.
Really? I didn't even
disaster
know,
postcard.
like, why would you want that? Like, why was that made? Oh, let's make a postcard, after Hurricane Hazel, whatever that was in like way back 50s or something. And why would you make a postcard out of that horrible situation?
Oh yeah, there's postcards of like ships going under. It is incredible, like taking on water and going under. It is incredible. So I guess my point is like, you can't buy postcards for what you think looks pretty. You should buy them for what you think looks weird. Real photo postcards, the ones that on the back, it says, this is a real photo. They're always black and white. They're shiny. Mm-hmm. It looks like a photo. If there's any identification of where it is, whether it's been scratched onto the front or or someone's written it on the back, are great. Even if you don't know where it is, sometimes you can figure out where it's of. And so if you think about it, this goes back to rarity. Let's say there was a postcard of, I don't know, a cow and a sign for a ranch you can barely read. And you figure out where that ranch is. And nobody else has that postcard because nobody else knows that postcard corresponds to that place. It's now rare. So you can sell it for a lot. This is what I did with the Boca Grande. I have a series of Boca Grande postcards that came in a box of other cards. Some of them say Boca Grande. They're real photo postcards. They've been out in the world before. I can find the examples of them on WorthPoint. They're worth, a good amount of money, like $20, $30, $40, not a ton. Then there's other ones next to them that have no identifying information. You would not know it's Boca Grande unless you found them in a box next to the other cards and then did what I do, which was to look up photos of Boca Grande and determine, oh my God, yes, these are also from Boca Grande. Those postcards are worth a lot of money because they are shots of Boca Grande that nobody else has because nobody else knew that those are of Boca Grande. It's a lot of research.
Yeah. Well, and in my limited knowledge of that, what I learned was if it's something that doesn't exist anymore, like an old Howard Johnson's motel or something like that, or there's something in the background that dates it, like a billboard with something on it, or, Disney stuff from the early days, postcard of Disney World, but Disneyland was first. Yeah.
Yeah.
The rides or whatever that don't exist anymore, that's your first clue that it might be worth something. If it's dated or there's, old cars and people with vintage clothing and the hairstyles of the day and all that kind of stuff that dates it, then it might be worth something.
Yeah. And the more wildly specific something is, the better, usually. I mean, rare and specific. Everyone has shots of the Statue of Liberty, right? There's lots of postcards of Statue of Liberty, of Eiffel Tower, of Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. But if it's of some weird little town or a little church that no longer exists in a small town in the Midwest in 1920, the odds of it being worthwhile are much, much higher. It's not a guarantee, but it's much higher. So I usually try to sort first from my gut again of like, this is weird enough. So, I'll make a pile of looks weird. I want to look them up and look those up first. And then if I have more time, I'll go to the others. And then the ones that are chrome, that the ones that we know from growing up, or I know from growing up, 1970s, 80s, they're full color. Those are usually not worth very much, but they could be. It's worth looking up. And then I just lot them together, or I donate them. It just depends. But, also you could lot them together by anything, by subject, by city. If somebody really loves Chatham, New Jersey, and you have a bunch of Chatham, New Jerseys, even if they're not individually worth something, they might be worth $15 to someone who's like, oh, I grew up there. I remember this restaurant, from the 70s.
Right. Because you can't put a price on nostalgia. And then again, you have that gift factor of, oh, my dad used to take me to this pancake house and it doesn't exist anymore. And so you get that postcard and give it to him for Father's Day or whatever. There's all kind of stories like that. But what I did want to ask was, I don't know any postcard collectors, but I wonder how they store them. Do they put them in like photo albums, or is there a special system they use to organize them? Because I can imagine collectors have thousands of them.
I do not know. I know that when I ship them, the collectors seem to like that I put each postcard into a little plastic slip that is specifically made for that. And then that goes inside a top loader. Kind of like the ones they use for, like, if you had a Pokemon card, but it's a bigger top loader that works for postcards. And my feeling is that people usually keep them at least in the slips and probably put them in, in just like those like long kinds of boxes, or even shoe boxes or perhaps there's a filing system. But I put them inside the top loader, and then I also put them in a rigid mailer. I know this adds weight, and it means that I'm paying for supplies. But again, I'm not selling postcards for $5. I'm not selling postcards usually for less than $10. So I feel like anyone who's going to buy it, I put in my listing that this is how it's going to be shipped, to let them understand it's going to be packaged and shipped professionally, and that I'm a professional selling to professional collectors. If that's not what they're looking for, they can try to find a postcard somewhere else. This way I have tracking. This way I know that they can't say that it got bent because it went through the machine in the USPS. I don't have to deal with that $1 special stamp that I know eBay does for postcards that supposedly has tracking, but then people say the tracking doesn't work. I don't want to deal with any of that. And I really don't want to deal with items under $10 unless it's a simple item to ship, like a rubber stamp, which is so easy because it's a rubber stamp. Unless you work hard, you're not going to break it.
Right. Well, and you're taking such care to make sure it's received in the same condition, because you don't know how special and important that postcard is to that person. Again, it's the nostalgia of, oh, I lived there, or I went to that place. And I can imagine if you didn't take such care in packing, you're going to get some nasty feedback. And nobody needs that.
That is absolutely true. I like to pack everything super, super well. And I do in general, not just postcards, get a lot of very positive feedback about that kind of packaging. I feel like I would be bummed, and it has happened to me, that I've received things I received something from, because I do buy a lot on eBay because, I love collectibles. It was glass, and it was shipped inside not a cereal box, but something sort of like that, where it was, like a box that had pictures on the outside of what the original product was, and with just newspaper shoved in there. I have no idea how the glass made it. It did make it, but I'm thinking like, that's a terrible impression. My sense was like, I would not buy from that particular seller again, because it doesn't feel like the person was thinking about how I would feel as the person who gave them money for it, I guess.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that going on. People just are in a hurry and they shove it in some kind of box. And hopefully that was a new person that just didn't know any better. That's not their way of life. But there's There's a segment of eBay sellers that want to do everything as cheaply as possible, and they use food boxes, or they use, really flimsy cardboard, or they're just not thinking about how it's going to be received. And, the longer you do this and get those negative feedbacks and comments, the faster you learn. But, a lot of newer sellers will think, once they have the money, that's it. I got their money, and they don't care about the shipping, but they have not experienced, item not as received and claims and all that stuff. It's, a live and learn thing. So you mentioned rubber stamps. Do you do much of that?
Oh, yeah. And I've actually acquired a lot lately. Some that were from that same estate that I got the stickers from.
Mm-hmm.
That they're auctioning off. I just like them. I swear that this is one of those things. It's probably the same reason that I sell a lot of vintage Christmas. I love Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And I love crafts. I have very good memories of doing crafts with my children who don't want to do crafts anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, I'm now continually drawn to the darn rubber stamps. I don't even really want to use them. I just think they're cool to look at, much like Christmas ornaments. So I get them in lots, and I know sometimes I sell them in small lots, but I actually do sell those individually, even though they are often low. They can go anywhere from about, 7 to, on the high end, they can definitely go to like 25 or 30,
Mm-hmm.
depending upon, again, rarity. But I don't mind listing those and selling them low, because even on the low ones, because they're very easy to list. All the information on a rubber stamp is on the side of it.
Mm-hmm.
The date it was made, the name of it, the company, the number of it. So it takes 2 seconds to look it up on eBay. You just put in the number and the company that made the stamp. You'll find someone else's listing usually. If you don't, then it's rare, right? If you do, then you can do a sell similar from it. It takes 2 seconds to measure, and they're easy to store, and they're very easy to ship. For me, for a rubber stamp, I take a piece of nice tissue paper and tape it with nice tape, put a little, tiny thank you sticker on it, wrap it in some bubble wrap, and stick it into a pretty poly mailer. The bubble wrap is because it is wood and you don't want to smash against something.
Mm-hmm.
That whole packing takes me about a minute and a half. So for
Right.
me, it's so easy and so fun to list, because that's the thing I can definitely do in front of the TV, that I will always buy rubber stamps. And then also, you can get very lucky, because like Halloween always sells, right?
Mm-hmm.
Halloween and Christmas are big deals. Halloween in particular, if you can find older Halloween rubber stamps, are worth a ton, or can be. So that's always fun too. You buy a lot, and then it turns out there's Halloween, or there's House Mouse. You know House Mouse?
I
He's a
do
cute-
not.
So House Mouse is a little mouse, and he's on a lot of stamps. I think that he might come from Penny Black. There's a couple of companies, I think, that make House Mouse, and it's anthropomorphic. That is, a mouse that does things like a person.
Right.
And some of House Mouse ones, if you see a happy little mouse with his mouse friends doing things on a big rubber stamp, some of them go for a ridiculously large amount of money. Some of them are lower, 15 or 20, but again, usually you're going to pick up a rubber stamp for $2. So, any house mouse is definitely a BOLO.
Well, I've seen, gallon Ziploc bags full of them at Goodwill, and they're mostly the Stampin' Up brand.
Yeah, and some of Stampin' Up do great. Some do, some don't.
Okay. So you really have to just buy the bag and bring it home and go through it.
Yeah, and if you don't like stamps, if you're not me and you don't think that they're really fun to look at, then you can redonate the rest. Certainly, if you think about like schools and community centers and all that, people can always use that kind of things. Or senior citizens' homes would love some rubber stamps good to do crafts with. So I feel like if you're buying a big gallon bag for a few dollars, and you even sell a few, and you don't want to clutter up your home with the rest, there's probably some good places to donate them to.
Well, and
they're
great.
hard to break.
Oh, good point. And that's a great item for my business model. I'm being very selfish here. Small, doesn't take up much room, easy to ship, profitable, and overlooked.
Right.
Because how many people know this, and I'm just sitting here thinking, now when I go out thrifting again, I'm going to that junky office aisle and I'm looking for stickers and I'm going to look for rubber stamps, because those just aren't things I normally look for.
Stickers are crazy. The scratch and sniff. I've only found them in the wild a few times. They're from the 80s. I'm 55. So like I lived through all of like the 70s and 80s.
Okay,
like,
we're the same age.
Yeah.
So do you remember wacky packs?
Yes.
Oh, those were so fun.
So I found some scratch and sniff. They weren't even like sealed packs. We're talking about like an open pack that has like half of the scratch and sniff stickers off the little sheet. And even those people bought for like $20 or $25. They do still smell, which is, I think, a little bit freaky if you think about the fact that whatever chemical was used still smells from the 1970s.
And that's like, books. We had some scratch and sniff books. I mean, the smells were kind of close to what they were supposed to be, but now you're wondering, what the heck did they use? What kind of chemicals are we inhaling when we do those old scratch and sniffs? They're outlawed now, probably, I'm sure, as toxic, poisoning children with scratch and sniff books and stickers. But we had those wacky packs in high school, and we would trade them. And that was just, I would love to have been the person who made these up and did the creativity on the way they changed the brand names of things and made it into something disgusting. It was just hilarious. Okay, well, we have been going almost an hour, and the last question I ask my guests is, since you're kind of new, only been doing this about 4 years, so what would you recommend, or what kind of advice would you give to people who are juggling as many things as you are and just getting into eBay? What advice would you give them for being successful from the start?
Be organized, be more organized than I am. I have ADHD and it shows. But I think a big part of it also is be prepared that there is a learning curve and that many items are long tail. I think if you're thinking that you're going to get into it for 6 months, at least for me, that wouldn't have been worth it, because it takes about 6 months to get up to where you need to be. It's very much a marathon. And I also I believe in taking some chances, but I don't believe in taking in too much stuff at the same time. Like, just because everything is free at the curb does not mean you should pick up everything. It becomes overwhelming. And, particularly if you don't like those items, like I know that you sell a lot of clothing, I believe. I hate clothing. I wear it, obviously. But there's just too many variables in clothing for me. Unless it's something weird and vintage, I don't want to do it. And for a long time, I would pick up clothing because I actually do know brands. I would know that the brand would make money, but I didn't want to iron it or clean it or measure it. If you know that about yourself, I would suggest, since there's so many niches out there, don't do the thing you don't like. You could find something else that makes a lot of money that maybe is just weird or different, or again, easy, like shampoo, soap, stickers, or rubber stamps. If you don't like researching, don't do paper ephemera. Like I do that. I like looking up postcards and brochures because it's fun for me. But if you're someone who hates research, you definitely don't want to pick something that's really research heavy. And it doesn't mean that you won't be successful. There's lots of niches to be successful in. It probably helps to do it in something that you know about. So if you're a Disneyland freak like me and you're a Christmas freak, you should be trying to sell things about Disney and Christmas.
Yeah, because you want to love what you're working with. You don't want to feel like, oh, I got to list that XYZ thing today. And in my defense on the clothing, I do agree that it is more labor intensive than other things. But when I started this, and I was an early adopter back in 2003, I know there are people that have been doing it longer than me, but that's most of what was in the thrift store. And I went in there to find something to wear to a job interview because I had lost my job, I had divorced, and I was just like, I don't have money to buy an expensive outfit. So I started looking through the clothes and saw these things new with tags. And that's when the epiphany hit me that I could buy this stuff and resell it, So that was maybe 80% of what was in our Goodwill stores. So it was the most plentiful type of item. And that's where I started. So, and I've learned so much along the way that it's just easy for me. I can spot things without even touching them and know that they are going to be high dollar. Linen looks different than any other fabric. Cashmere has a look, but there's a lot of blends that will fool you. So anyway, I have scaled back on how much clothing I do, but I'll leave things behind, and big heavy coats and stuff. I just don't want to deal with them. I like swimwear and bras and small things that are easy to photograph and that sell. I mean, swimwear is a great category to sell in because women hate trying on swimwear in retail stores. So you can try it on at home and return it. And rarely do I even get a swimwear return. So, everything is very deliberate and intentional. It's not just like I go in there and pile up my cart with as much clothing as I can. I might be in there 3 hours and only buy 10 things. So,
well, I'm always impressed by people who sell clothing and, make it look good, which you do. I think that my attempts of making things look good have been kind of like, those cake fails that you see on
yeah, the Pinterest cake fails.
Yeah. Most of my attempts with clothing have been like cake fails. And again, that's why, since I list everything on my big wood dining room table, it's like made out of an old barn door.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very good look for something like a piece of vintage so-and-so, or even a postcard with a little bit of wood behind it.
Right.
It is a less good look for like, a nice dress.
The whole time I'm preparing clothing, whatever it is, steaming it, photographing it, I'm just thinking, oh, somebody is going to love this. This is going to look so good on somebody who's going to this kind of event, or, oh, I just love this fabric. It feels so good. I can't keep everything. Everything's not my size. And that's where my mind is when I'm doing clothing, is that somebody's just going to love this. Well, really, for everything I sell, I think about, oh, what's this person going to use this for? And, and then you get these messages from people that are like, oh, I've been looking for this for 5 years, stuffed animals, plush, all that kind of stuff. And, you've just made somebody's day by having that item available for them. So
I love that. And I'm just going to say that goes back to the packaging too, because again, I sell a lot of vintage things, a lot of collectibles. If you're receiving something that reminds you of your childhood, or you're giving it to your mom or whatever, you want it to be nicely packaged. If it comes in a piece of like old newspaper or in a cereal box, it doesn't have the same feeling of it being special. That person bought it from us. We might have paid $1 for it, and maybe they spent $50 for it because it's that very important memory. So you want it to look like a $50 memory when you send it to them, so that they don't feel like they've regretted their purchase, that they actually feel really good about what they have purchased. It's not a waste of $50. It's refinding a memory.
Right. They're so happy when they open it. And I don't think I've ever been asked how much I paid for something. They don't care. They want that stuffed animal they had as a child. They want that game they used to play with their siblings. That they want that perfume that their mother wore. And I don't even think it's on their radar that, God, that eBay seller got it at an estate sale for $1 and I had to pay $75. that person is not my customer. I'll tell you that much.
No, me neither. And our customers understand that what we've done, I used the word museum before, we've curated. What we are is we're curators, just the way people are for museums or fancy shops where people, get things where the merchandise comes from all different places, and someone has curated and decided what kind of things the kind of customer for that place would like. And so that's, I feel like, what people are paying for is our expertise and our eye, and our packaging of curating these lovely gifts. And it does not matter, as you said, what we paid for them or even what they were originally worth.
Yeah, and I think Sherry mentioned the word custodian. We are custodians of these items. We found them out in the wild, and they're rare. And I think that's appreciated by the people who are buying them for nostalgia.
I agree.
Okay, well, I have taken up enough of your valuable time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing all of these details about specific items, because that's why people tune in and listen, is so they can learn more about what's working for other people and at least try it. And so we're all going to be rushing to the office supply aisle at Goodwill to look for stickers and rubber stamps and postcards. So
great. Well, thank you so much.
Okay. We will see you on the Facebook group.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. Another fun chat where I learned a lot of new and valuable stuff, and I hope you did too. Today's motivational quote is from Louise Hay. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us, but she left quite a legacy of books and videos and motivational speeches and affirmations, and I have followed her my entire adult life. Her quote is, "It's important to remember that people are always doing the best they can, including you." And I have to remind myself of that too. Be gentle with yourself. Sometimes we are our own worst critic. And if you wouldn't say it to your child or someone else you love, don't say it to yourself, because thoughts become things. So be careful with that self-talk and keep it positive. It makes a huge difference in your life and your stress level and your success. Thanks so much for tuning in this week. I appreciate all of you who listen, and rest assured, I have many more seller chats lined up. So I will talk to you next week. Have a great week on eBay. Bye.